Kedarshenu Bakodesh, I'd like to start with a beracha Rabotai. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Shehakol Nihiyah Bidvaro. Amen. When Klal Yisrael is threatened physically, and when Klal Yisrael is threatened spiritually. When the Jewish people are threatened spiritually, take a look at the story of Channukah. And where we're threatened physically, take a look at the story of Purim. When the Jewish people are threatened physically, we reacted with spiritual tefillot. And then when the Jewish people were threatened spiritually, we reacted physically. We went out and we fought. Rabotai, I'd like to bring an idea to your attention, and I'm hoping that with this idea, we'll have a new feel, not only an understanding in the entire concept of Channukah. There was this great fight. This was a fight that was probably the all-time fight of history. If pay-per-view would have gotten their hands on this fight, it would have been something that no numbers can count. This was that fateful night, the famous night. The night that Yaakov Avinu goes back for Pachim Ktanim. He leaves his family, he leaves his wives and children. He goes back over the Arden, and he gets these little small jars of oil. Rabotai, what was so special about that jar of oil? So the Shach al Torah writes something fantastic. Says the Shach that Yaakov Avinu, even when he was robbed from Eliphaz, there was one thing that he held on to, and that was his mateh. Ki b'makli avarti et hayarden hazeh. What was special about that staff, that stick, that Yaakov Avinu wouldn't even give up? His clothing were taken, but the makel he didn't give up. Writes the Shach, and this is also brought in the Idra, that Yaakov Avinu's staff, the makel, was hollowed out, and there was oil inside. And that oil ensured that there would be no night that Yaakov Avinu would go by without the ability to learn Torah. So the oil to Yaakov was more precious than even his clothing. And that's why the clothing Eliphaz took. But the stick, the makel, the oil, he wouldn't give up. Because that's my Torah. That's my learning. I'm not giving up my learning. And so too, now you understand that little jar, those pachim ktanim, that he forgot on the other side of the Arden, that was the oil. The oil that Yaakov Avinu would use to learn all night. And because of that, he leaves his wives, he leaves his children. He goes back and gets the little pach, shemen, the pachim ktanim. Writes the Shach al Torah, that pach shemen Yaakov Avinu went back for was the pach of his Torah. That pach shemen was the same pach shemen to be held for 1,000 years to the story of Channukah, the one pach shemen that was found untouched and unbroken. And because that pach shemen was the shemen of oil of Torah learning, says the Shach, that's the reason why the miracle happened at night. Because that oil was used for Torah learning at night. And therefore, it was going to be a pach shemen that was going to make a miracle for the Jewish people by the Channukah menorah at night. And it's there that Yaakov Avinu goes back. And when he goes for the oil of Torah, who does he meet? He meets the Sar Esav, the Samach Mem himself. And boy, was it a fight. And they fought all night. And whether it was a physical or a spiritual fight, but when it came time for Alot HaShachar, Yaakov Avinu bests and beats this Samach Mem, this angel, the archangel of Esav. And the Esav angel says, let me go. I need to go back up to Shamayim. It's time for my Shirah. And Yaakov Avinu says, I'm not going to let you go unless you bless me. And the angel says, I'm going to give you a blessing. What's your name? Yaakov? No longer. From now on, they're going to call you Yisrael. Rabotai, he asked for a blessing, not a name change. He asked, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. And instead, the angel comes back and changes his name to Yisrael. Where is the blessing? We know that the name of a person is a person's essence. And that's why great tzaddikim, great mekubalim, they can just take a look at a name and they can tell you so many incredible things about a person that they've never met. Because the name is the person. Shemo ken hu, says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Yaakov Avinu, when he got that name change, his whole essence was upgraded and changed to such a blessing that the Jewish people, until the times of Channukah, had no clue what we've just gotten. Do you know what the name Yisrael stands for? Till now you were Yaakov. But after tonight, when the angel came to be mitameh, the Torah of Yaakov Avinu, the angel came to defile and bring and break the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. And Yaakov Avinu's Torah beat him. The name of Yisrael stands for the ability for the Jewish people to stay pure in spite of the Goyim's attempts to be mitameh us. That's Yisrael. Ki sarita. Sarita means that you bested my best attempts. I tried everything to be mitameh you. I tried everything to defile you. I tried to throw you into the great mixing pot, melting pot of America and see somehow or other if I can mix you in and bring up the rates of intermarriage. But I can't get you, Yaakov. As long as you're learning Torah, I can't touch you. Ki sarita. Your Torah beat me. And therefore your name is Yisrael. And the name Yisrael is the name that flaunts the victory of the Kedusha of the Jewish people over the Tum'ah of the Goyim. It's the name that screams, we remain pure no matter what they try on us. And now I understand something. Now we can get it. You see, because the very next parasha, when we go to the tragedy of the story of Dinah, Vatetze Dinah, Dinah goes out. And sure enough, what happened to her in the city of Shechem, Al Yedeh Shechem ben Chamor, was something of beyond tragic measures. And here Dinah, the news comes back to Yaakov Avinu. Now listen to these words, Rabotai. The news comes back to Yaakov Avinu that what happened to his daughter took place, that they breached the purity of a Jewish girl. And you know what the pasuk says? Vayavo achim en hasadeh. And the brothers came back. And you know what they heard? Ki nivala asa bi Yisrael. It doesn't say Ki nivala asa bebat Yisrael. It doesn't say Ki nivala asa bebnei Yisrael. No. This concept of Yisrael, the new name, the great blessing that we got from none other than the Samach Mem, that we are the people of purity, and that our purity cannot be breached by the Goyim, that day was breached. That story of Dinah, the purity of a Jewish girl, was broken and breached by the Tum'ah of the Goyim. Al Yedeh Shechem ben Chamor, Ki nevala asa, an abomination took place, Bi Yisrael, in the concept of the name Yisrael, because this stands for our purity, and that day the purity was breached. Who are these two brothers? Vayavo achim min hasadeh. Says Rashi, Shimon v'Levi. And sure enough, these two brothers get up and they wipe out the entire city of Shechem. Al devar, that they broke the purity of the Jewish people and their sister. Rabotai, open your hearts. Where was everybody else? Where was Reuven? Where was Yehuda? Where was Yisachar and Zebulun? Where was everybody? Just two brothers. Only Shimon and Levi. They're the only ones that took it to heart that the purity of Am Yisrael was just literally defiled. That it irked them to the extent that they couldn't sleep that night, that the next day they were out wielding swords, that they wiped out the entire city of Shechem. Just two brothers! Where is the other 8? Where is everybody? And because of this, I want to bring to your attention something that I believe is fantastic. You see, because later on, you scroll down to Parashat Vayechi, and you take a look at the blessings that Yaakov gives to his sons. And when it comes time for these two sons, Shimon and Levi, listen to the words, but then look at the Rashis. The words say, Shimon v'Levi achim, mecherotehem, arur apam. You'll listen to the words that Yaakov tells these two brothers, and they sound like rebuke. They don't sound like blessings. But then all of a sudden, although Yaakov Avinu sounds like he didn't say one nice word to Shimon and Levi, you look at the Rashi. You know what Rashi tells you? You know what Shimon was zocheh to, says Rashi? Shimon was zocheh that out of his tribe is going to come the Rebbes of Tinokot Shobet Rabban, the most purest of Torah in Klal Yisrael. And you know what's going to come out of Levi? Well, that's a no-brainer. From Levi came out the Kohanim. From Levi came out the Leviim. The ones that run Bet Hashem, B'Kedushata. So the Holy of Holiest of jobs in Israel were given to two brothers that in the psukim of Birkat Yaakov, it sounded like Yaakov didn't have one nice word to tell them. And yet they were zochet to the biggest things in the world. How does that stem? How does that work? And the answer is that there's a secret. Yaakov Avinu told them, Arur apam. Your anger. You did it out of anger. What you did was incredible. Shimon and Levi, you two stood up for the purity of the Jewish people when it was on the line. And nobody else did. But you two did. And because you stood up and you fought for the purity of Am Yisrael and the purity of our daughters and the purity of the Jewish people, I'm going to make the two of you the guardians of the Kedusha of Am Yisrael, Shimon and Levi. Shimon, I'm going to give you the purity of Torah. You're going to be the ones teaching the little children, Tinokot Shobet Rabban, the holiest of holy of learning. Levi, I'm going to give you the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. You're going to run the Kedusha, the house of Hashem, the Bet HaMikdash, the Korbanot, Levi, Kohanim, Leviim, Biyachad. You stood up to fight for the holiness of the Jewish people. You stood up to defend the purity of Am Yisrael. You became now the guardians of the purity of the Jewish people. Shimon v'Levi. And you want to hear something funny before I go on in my dirasha? If there's anybody here, a Levi in this room, you know what I'm talking about. Because when you see things going down that is an outright offense against God's honor, whether you're going to admit it here or not, it bugs you. And guess what? That's your essence. That's part of your DNA. That's part of what it means to be a Levi. That's part of what it means to be a Kohen. That's part of what it means to be a Rebbe of young children. These are the people that in their bones, it bothers them when they see Am Yisrael slipping away to the Tum'ah lo aleinu v'lo alechem of the Goyim and the generations as we go down and get smaller and smaller. And now, gentlemen, I have an answer for you. An answer to the great question of the Sifat Emet. The Sifat Emet wants to know, he says, it's so interesting, but yet so weird. That so many times in Klal Yisrael, we were in a lot of trouble. We went through a lot of difficulties in Galut. But always the leader that held us and led us out of our problems was always the Gedolei Hador. It was always the rabbis. In every story, Purim, it was Mordechai. In every story, there was always a Gadol Hador that was leading the Jewish people in the time of Tzarot out, like in all the generations, except for one story. Channukah. It's the only story that the entire effort was not run by the Rabbanim. It was run by the Kohanim Levad, like we read today in Al Nisim. Hashmonayu banav, Yochanan, his sons, Yehuda Maccabi. We know the story. Why was just this effort of Channukah, from all the stories of Tzarot and all the problems that we had in Galut, but this story, Dafka, had to be brought out al Yedei Kohanim? So asks the Sifat Emet. But I think now the answer is a great answer. The answer is fantastic. Rabotai, I'd like to introduce you to the essence of Channukah, but through a way that I hope I don't hurt you too much. Because you might not know, there's a famous Rashi, and the reason why it's not so famous is because it's not on the page. But if you open up to the Gemara in Ketubot, Gimel Amud Bet, the Gemara tells us about one of the most horrific decrees that were ever thrown on the Jewish people in history. The name of the sugya, and it's kedai to look this up, was Hegmon Tehila. This is Gimel Amud Bet, the Masechet Ketubot. What a sugya that is. Oh, does that bring back the yeshiva days? Hegmon Tehila. Listen to this horrifying decree. The king, the governor, the general, the Hegmon, he made a terrible decree that the night that a Jewish girl gets married, before she can go home with her chatan, she has to first go to the house of the Hegmon, and only the next morning can she go back to her husband. Could you imagine such a horrific, such a horrible decree? This is a Sugyan Gemara, Hegmon Techila. And the whole Gemara over there talks about the famous concept of Yahareg ve'al Ya'avor. If one has to give their life to be able to avoid from the three cardinal sins. The concept of Karka Olam, as mentioned over there in Tosafot. That talks about Esther Hamalka and how she was allowed to be in the same room as Ahashverosh. That's the sugya. But let's go back to the decree. There was a terrible decree that any Jewish girl that gets married, the night of her wedding, she needs to go first to the house of the Goy. Is there any bigger scare of a horrific decree than literally to break and destroy the purity of our Jewish women, of the Taharat HaMishpacha, of the Jewish home? This decree was the worst. If you take a look over there at Rashi, you won't see it. But if you open up a Shita Mikubetzet, he will bring you over there by Makom, Gimel Amud Bet, on the story of Hegmon Techila, the Rashi Yishanim. It's an old the old Girsa of Rashi. And you know what Rashi says over there in the old Girsa? You know when the story of Hegmon Techila was, says Rashi? Bimei Hashmonaim Hayu. This was one of the decrees, it was one of the vicious decrees in the time of Channukah. Did you hear that? In Channukah, they were going after our purity, our daughters. You know what that means? That means that Channukah was a story of Dinah all over again. Do you know the Midrash about Yehudit? What a Midrash. The Midrash writes that Yehudit, she was the daughter of Kohen Gadol. Her brothers were later on to be the Maccabeim. Yehudit was getting married that night. And everybody was dancing. And it was a simcha unbelievable. And she looked at her brothers and she said, "What are you dancing? Why are you sameach? How could you be sameach? Do you know what's going to happen to me tonight? Do you know after this whole wedding is over, what's going to happen to me? I have to go to the house of the general? I have to go to the house of the Hegmon. Do you understand what's going to happen to me tonight? How I'm going to be defiled and disgraced. How the Kiddushav Am Yisrael is on the line. And you guys are dancing, heke, dancing, like nothing's happening." She pushed the buttons of her brothers, Kohanim. You don't push Kohanim's buttons. She pushed their buttons. She got them going. Till finally one of the brothers said, "What are we supposed to do? This is what it is. This is the decree. We can't fight it." Says the Midrash, she got up on a chair and she started to undress in front of the entire Hatuna. And the brothers started to scream, "What are you doing? You're embarrassing us. And she says, oh, now when it's birabim, I'm embarrassing you? And what's going to happen tonight, b'chadrei chadarim, is not going to be embarrassing to you? This you can't live with, but that you can live with? Do you know what's going to happen to me tonight? How could you dance? That was it. That was the Mako Patish. It was at that moment that the brothers of Yehudit, they band together as a small band of men, and they went out to fight against hundreds of thousands. But what drove them? What drove them was the fight, to be the guardian and stand up, and to protect the Kedusha of the Jewish people. And it was that night of Rabim Biyad Me'atim, it was that night, the night of that wedding, that they went out to fight the war. Do you know what the Midrash says? These brothers came out. All together they were 12, 7 brothers with a father. And the Goyim said to them, you're 12. We're 200, 300, 500,000. What are you thinking? You want to fight us? You want to fight us? Hashem's not going to save you. He already promised He's not going to bring another Mabul to the world. That's what the Midrash writes. That the Goyim said. He already promised He's not going to bring another Mabul to the world. So we can get away with this, and you guys can't stop us. We're hundreds of thousands. You're just a band of brothers, a group of 12. And then they said, well, what's Hashem going to do? He's going to send you angels. He's going to send you malachim. He's not going to send you malachim to help you. You know why? Because we dipped our swords in the blood of pig. And therefore not even the angels will come to fight us because it was too defiling for the upper heavens. You guys are finished. You guys have no shot. And it was at that moment that these young Maccabim, this group, standing up, Mi Lashem Elai, that's right. That's what Channukah is about. That's what Channukah is about. It's about Mi Lashem Elai. Who still cares enough for Hashem's glory and Hashem's honor to stand up when it's being tested, when it's being defiled? Does it still bother you when we see we're losing our kids to the streets? Does it bother you? Does it bother you when we see things going on in our own circles that's not beseder, whether it's happening in the way of weddings, whether it's happening in the way of parties, whether it's happening in the way of vacations? But does it bother you? Does it bother you that we're losing the holiness, the Kedusha of Am Yisrael? It bothered them. It bothered them so much that they were ready to fight out 12 against hundreds of thousands just to stand up for the Kedusha of the Jewish people. They're the guardians. We're the guardians. And we were ready to show that the oil will never mix. The oil, Am Yisrael, we will never mix. You can mix us with anything you want. We continue to rise and raise to the top. And that became the vendetta and the theme of Channukah for years. And now we understand the answer. What an answer this is. Said the Sfat Emet, why is the story of Channukah the story that was brought about through Kohanim Dafka? And the answer is, you know what Borei Olam said? Oh, Hegmon Techilah. The Jewish girls, the night of their weddings, are being brought to the house of the general, the Goyim, the story of Yehudit. If that's the case, then Yavan is trying to pull the Dinah story all over again. Who were the 2 brothers that stood up by Dinah and guarded the purity of the Jewish girls in Am Yisrael? Shimon v'Levi. So who are we going to bring back to the story of Channukah now? The ones that are going to again stand up for the purity of the Jewish people and our daughters? Shimon and Levi. Levi is the Kohanim. The great miracle of the war, Rabim Biyad Me'atim, came through the Kohanim. And the Nes of the light came through Shimon. And you know how I know that? Because the Midrash writes. And let me introduce you to the story of the dreidel. And that is that right when they banned the learning of Torah, the Rebbes, they took their children out to the forests and they hid. and they learnt Torah b'mesirut nefesh. They learnt Torah with the young children in purity and hiding in the forests. And then when the soldiers would come, quickly, they would give a signal, and the kids would take their chumashim, they would take their mishnayot, and they would hide it under the rocks, and they would take out these little tops, these little toys, and they would begin to play with it, as if there was just some sort of a kindergarten going on, as if it was just a play stay of a bunch of little kids in a gan. But not always were they so lucky. Says the Midrash, there were many times that the Rebbe with the young children were caught in the forest doing the very illegal act of learning Torah under Yavan. And you know what happened to those Rebbes and those children, says the Midrash? They were taken and shackled together, Rebbe and students, and brought to the city square, and they were burnt alive al yedei Kiddush Hashem. En ora ela Torah. You want to know where the miracle of the Or came from? It came from the Torah of Tinokot Shobet Rabban and their Rebbes, who came from the tribe of Shimon. So the miracle of the light came from Shimon. The miracle of the war came from Levi. Shimon v'Levi ahim. You are the guardians of the purity of the Jewish people. You're the only ones that stood up by the first round, by Dinah. You're the ones that are going to be brought back to stand up again when our purity is challenged by Yavan. A few years back, I was driving down Ocean Parkway. I was still living in Lakewood at the time before I moved back to Brooklyn. And I was coming back from a class in Har Lebanon, and it was late. It was one of those late night classes, driving back to Lakewood to Jersey. And I'm coming down Ocean Parkway. It was a little after 11 at night, and I got stuck by a red light. So I'm sitting there, and it's quiet. It's one of those nights. Nothing's moving. The lights are just changing, and you're sitting there alone in the car trying to get back home. I'm sitting and waiting for the light to change. And while I'm sitting there, I look to the right. And I see a group of kids. There must have been about 20 kids. All over each other. Ages, not more than 13, 14 years old. Young. Not even teenagers. Young teenagers. But mamash. And I looked and I said, wait 1 second. They're so young. 14, 13-year-old kids. And I looked at 11 o'clock at night. I said to myself, what's going on? Where are the parents? I don't know. Maybe it's different times. In our day, when I grew up, I came home from high school. High school, not 13, 14, forget about that. I'm talking about high school. When I came home from high school, older, 16, 17, if I wasn't home in the house at 6:45, my mother was already calling the mothers of all my friends, trying to find out exactly what's going on, where is he? I came home, you're 15 minutes late, where were you? What happened? And they want to know, din v'heshbon, who were you with? What were you doing? I want the phone numbers to find out, be'emet. We had to give a din v'heshbon. Here I'm looking at these kids, 13, 14 years old, at 11 o'clock at night, hanging out like they have the whole night to go. And mamash, boys and girls, all over each other. I couldn't deal with it. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a Levi. So I pulled the car over to the side once the light turned green. And I got out of my Toyota Camry. And I walked up to the group. I said, guys, what's going on? What's doing? Hey, Rabbi, what's going on? And we start high-fiving. Yeah, bro, yo, bro. Everyone's bro. Even the girls are bro. I said, what's doing, guys? What's going on? What are you up to tonight? We start schmoozing. We start talking about the Yankees. We start talking about the Islanders. We start talking about the Mets who never had a shot. We're talking. We're going back and forth. Till finally, I said, guys, tell me, you hungry? I said, yeah, Rabbi, we're always hungry. We're hungry, yeah. We're hungry. Why? I said, I'm just thinking, maybe we'll Maybe we'll hit up Kosher Delight. Alei Shalom. You know what I mean? Maybe we'll go to Kosher Delight. It's on me. It's on the rabbi. I mean, it's really not on me. It's on Amex. That's the truth. But it's on me. What do you say, guys? Yalla, let's go. Come on. Those poppers have your name on it. Let's do this. And they're looking at me like, seriously? And I said, yeah. And I'm talking. By the way, gentlemen, I just want to tell you something. The martial arts has taught. When I was a kid, when the martial arts taught us that when you're going up against the group, who's the first one you hit? The leader, right? You always hit the leader first. Immediately, I figured out which kid was the leader. Immediately, he's the kid with the confidence who carries himself with his head in the air. He's the one that when he turns right, the whole group turns right. When he turns left, the whole group leans left. I zero on the leader and I start hacking with him. And we start talking. I say, so tell me, what are you eating tonight? What are you hungry? What are you hungry for? He says, Rabbi, wow, I'd love to have. And he starts giving me a whole itemized bill. I'd love to have this. I'd love to have that. And maybe you can throw in some fries. And don't forget the onion rings. And then I want this sauce. They're very particular about their food, you know that. And I want their sauce. I said, okay. Alai, it's on me. Pleasure. And as I'm talking with him, I'm taking a little step to the right. And I'm taking a little step to the right. And as I'm taking little steps to the right, all the boys are walking little steps to the right. And we start talking again about sports. And we start talking again about school. And we start talking about everything in the world except for anything that we really want. Rabotai, if you want to move a kid, you talk to him about him. You don't talk to him about you. You talk to him about him. You don't talk to him about Torah yet. Not yet. First, build a bridge. Remember the Yesod. We reach before we teach. Please, grab this. We reach before we teach. You got to reach first. You got to connect first. You got to build a bridge first. And then you can start opening commerce between two. So as we're talking with the whole group and we're all shifting to the right with all the boys, suddenly I looked up and I realized, Baruch Hashem, we already made an indivisible divide, a mechitza, between the chevra, the boys, and the whole group of girls. And I said to the guys, my car is right over there. We're going to fit everybody. No, we had about 12 kids over, 12 boys. A Toyota Camry. I mean, it literally looked like Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. It was that famous with the 15 clowns that came out of a Volkswagen. But I had 15 clowns in that car with me that night. They all go running into the car. Rah, rah, rah. And the girl's like, wait. And I turned around to the girls and said, girls, please, forgive me. But I give you my promise that when I'm done with these kids, years later, you're going to thank me. They're going to come back and they're going to be so much better husbands to you than they ever could have been if I would have drove off. I just couldn't drive off. I couldn't drive off. And neither should you. And neither should you. You shouldn't drive off either. Don't drive off or write off any kid. But understand that Kedusha of Klal Yisrael is being attacked by the streets in unbelievable ways. And we could still do something about it if we cared enough. We can do something about it. We're still the guardians of the purity of Am Yisrael. And the purity starts with the next gen, with the kids. We got into that car somehow. I had 8 kids in the back and 3 in the front and 2 in the trunk. We drove out to Avenue J. We got to Kosher Delight. They ordered up their food and they ordered up mercilessly. With no mercy. I'm telling you, I'm talking bli shum busha. I'm talking about with the trimmings. And Rabbi, can I get a drink? Yeah, sure, you can get a drink. Go ahead. The kid's taking out cans of soda. This is for my cousin. This is for my friend. This is for my buddy. I'm going to take this one home for my younger brother. Yeah, why not? Everyone. I said, guys, come on. We're Nachna. We're HL. We're not just Heke guys. We go upstairs. Oh, Rabbi. Go up. Yeah. We go upstairs. We all went upstairs. We had the upstairs to ourselves. We sat there and schmoozed for an hour. Mamash, for an hour. And we enjoyed every minute of it. The only one that was crying through that night, Hazita, was my wife. She was calling me, 19, where are you already? What's going on? I said, you're not going to believe this. I'm sitting in the upstairs of Kosher Delight, Alei Shalom, I'm telling you. You don't understand. I'm here with Bli Ayin Hara, a group of amazing kids. I can't let them go. She says, what time are you going to be home? I said, I'll call you when I'm out, but you'll see, Bezat Hashem, this is going to be worth it. That night we didn't speak one word of Torah. And I hope you don't hold that against me. But I want to tell you, boy, did we bond that night. We bonded on their level. And because of that, at the end of the night, I turned to the guys and I said, I had a great time tonight with you guys. You're a great, great group of guys. Can we do this again? I said, yeah, Rabbi, are you joking? We'll do this every week. What, are you joking me? I said, good. But do you mind, next week we'll do it in Har Lebanon, and instead of coming to Kosher Light, I'll bring the Kosher Light in. What do you think? They said, yeah, great. I said, okay, give me one guy who's going to take the orders from everybody because they're very particular. They gave me one guy, his phone number. I said, I'm going to call you on Monday. You're going to get everybody's numbers so that on Wednesday night, we're going to have this grand class. We're all going to sit together and just chill and enjoy the food. They said, yeah, Rabbi, great. Next week, Rabotai, I want to ask you a question. This started with 12 boys. How many boys do you think showed up the next week? What do you think? 4 out of 12. 6 out of 12. 10 out of 12? 30. I had 18 out of 12. How's that shayach? Because the 12 said, there's this Mejnun rabbi that's taking us out. I think he owns, one kid said, I think he owns Kosher Delight. Because the soda was flowing, the onion rings were rolling. 18 kids showed up that first week. And we brought in the food. And Baruch Hashem, we brought in extra for the extras. And that class began. And we started week after week after week. And some of those boys today are men, married, from the pillars of the shul that we have today, Magen Avraham, back on East 9th. And the other group of those boys all went to Eretz Yisrael. Some stayed for 2 years, some stayed for 3, coming home with Mesechtot finished. And it's all because of the red light on Avenue V and Ocean Parkway, where Borei Olam sometimes puts you in a stopping position and shows you something and then looks you dead in the eye and asks you, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Are you going to light me a little light? Are you going to light up a little darkness in Am Yisrael? Do you care enough to still step up for my honor? Channukah Sameach. Now it's much older.
Am I amazing?
Thank you for listening.
No,
thank you for listening.
It's a no-brainer.
Thank you for listening. Habibi. משנה לשנה.
באמת אשריך. סגן המזבוב.
אני רואה אותך משנה לשנה. פעם הבאה אני אראה אותך במשיח בעזרת השם. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming, guys.
Rabbi, I met your sister, Rabbi Fahi's wife.
Oh.
Your parents must have been amazing because everybody's a star. No sketch. I'm being honest. And I love that parenting advice.
Oh.
You talk about them and don't talk about anything else, and you build.
We try our best.
You do.